You're watching Fox 40 News, the only local newscast at 5:30.
Well, California's oldest weekly newspaper is nearing its final days. We're talking about the Mountain Messenger. It is the latest newspaper to fall victim to changing times. Mark Twain was once published in the Sierra County weekly paper.
Yeah, well, since 1853, the Mountain Messenger has been covering news here in Northern California. Now, more than 160 years later, that paper is preparing for its final issue. Fox 40's Doug Johnson reporting.
And the king of dying businesses. It's just another paper going broke.
When Don Russell talks about the Mountain Messenger, it's like he's talking about an old dear friend, one who he never wants to see again.
It was a good gig. I really enjoyed it. But old Pappy time.
Russell bought the paper in the early 1990s and has covered stories big and small.
We have barking dogs. We have Forest Service misbehavior.
But these days, he says he just doesn't have the energy to run the paper anymore, and after months of trying to sell it, he's given up.
It's more work than the paper can afford to pay.
The Mountain Messenger is the oldest weekly paper in the state, but its major claim to fame is Mark Twain wrote for the paper under his real name Sam Clemens for several weeks in the 1850s. As Russell tells it, while hiding from the law, after being challenged to a duel for criticizing the Sanitary Commission.
Nevada had just outlawed dueling. And the governor, for whom Twain's brother worked, said, I'll give you 24 hours, but you got to get out of town.
Now, there is still a paper that covers Sierra County, the Sierra Booster, but that comes out twice a month. This paper was weekly. Folks here in town have been coming up to us on the street and saying this is a huge loss for them, and especially since their town has already seen the closure of a bank and a gas station.
You got to read the sheriff's blotter and then 100 years ago today, and that'll catch you up on 90% of your gossip in town. Yeah, it's pretty much the only news outlet that we have up here.
Russell doesn't want to advertise exactly just how many more papers he'll publish to ensure advertisers still pay him what's owed, but he says there won't be any after January, unless, of course, someone else buys the paper.
It is a drag, but yeah, 30 years. I've done it.
In Downeyville, Doug Johnson, Fox 40 News.
You can tell there was some emotion there. It's hard to say goodbye to something. There's something so nostalgic about newspapers, and especially, us being in the journalism industry, saying goodbye to newspapers. I remember every morning my dad would sit at the table with coffee.
Yeah.
My grandfather, every Sunday, it was a Sunday paper, and they would be all over the kitchen table in the morning. And
there's a certain piece that you get with a constant, something that's always constant. The morning paper comes and people don't do it anymore, but less people are getting it, but it's not all that often that we cover newspapers actually non-existent anymore when it closes the doors for good. And that's a piece of journalism that is going away and is never going to come back.
And you heard the man in that story. He says that's how we know what's going on in town.
It's him. It's who he is.
Very sad. All right, police arrested a man overnight